OpenAI.
AI.
AI. AI.
AI.
Last December, DeviantArt, one of the largest and most established art sharing platforms in the world, announced it was going to create its own AI art generator called DreamUp AI, and would train this AI on all of the art uploaded to the site. After significant backlash, they backed down from this, but the site has since been flooded with AI-generated imagery, both beautiful and bizarre. A few weeks ago, one of the largest literary magazines in the world, Clarkesworld, was forced to close its submissions after being overwhelmed with over 500 AI-generated, quote, stories, a trend that only looks to be increasing. Many magazines do not have the manpower nor money to wade through hundreds of spam submissions, and so will be forced to close, charge submission fees, or only permit certain authors to submit. At the same time, thousands of people have taken to AI art generators as a new creative outlet, allowing them to make things like this faster and easier than ever before. To some, this is the beginning of a revolution, the supposed democratization of art in a way never possible before, while to others this is a new kind of dystopia, a rot in the roots of the human condition. To understand which it is, I have spent the last few months deeply immersed in the AI community and using this technology to understand how it really works and where it might take us. And not only that, but I have a law degree, and I specialized in copyright. This video is something like 2 hours long now. It has taken me months of work to make. This job is volatile, it is constantly changing, especially with, well, AI coming into art and writing now. So, it'd mean a lot if you wanted to support me for a couple bucks a month down at the link below over at Patreon. And thank you to my patrons already. You made this possible.
I'm the apocalypse. I'm always rising. A ruin that wants to heal. Oh baby, I know for sure.
There are 3 big reasons AI art has faced such immense pushback, but the biggest of them is about theft. That like DeviantArt's DreamUp AI, programs like Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, and DALL-E have been built on the work of artists without paying them and without their consent, not only using their work in generating AI art, but enabling others to more easily steal from them in doing so. But before we get too far down that ethical rabbit hole, I think it's really important to understand that AI art can be generated in a number of different ways on a technical level. You probably already know that some are generated from text prompts, and this is the most common way of doing it. But some are image plus text prompts, where the AI will try to edit an image with what you say. Some are also variations, where you give the AI a host of artworks, or a single image, and ask it for slightly different versions of those images. And then there is also textual inversion, which allows people to use a small set of images to control how a text is interpreted and the image is generated. And importantly, there are also dozens of plugins and features like ControlNet, LoRa, Invoke AI, and embeddings, which allow the user to control that process even more. All of these have their own separate ethical and legal issues. Take a look at this clear instance of copyright violation an AI user made of this piece by Elector Fencer. It is nearly identical to the original art. It's a clear market substitute for Fencer's original piece, but it's at a much lower price. And this con artist, by the way, went on to try and sell this art as their own for a, quote, modest fee. An absolute coward move. But it's important to understand that pieces this similar to the original works probably did not originate from just a text prompt. Instead, they likely gave the AI Elector's art and asked for variations, each one slightly different. The AI is very unlikely to create an image this similar to the original completely on its own or with just a text prompt, and if it does, that's more of a mistake. That's not really how the technology was designed to work. Even if I gave the AI the Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci, of which it has a lot of experience with because there are so many copies of it online, it'll only give me these close approximations to the original image. which aren't nearly as identical as that piece was to elective fences. This kind of more explicit copyright violation isn't that different to someone taking your art and reworking it a little in Photoshop. All it is lazier. But this has led to people conflating a few different issues. These programs being built on stolen art, with them being designed to steal, with them being used to steal, which is understandable given what the hell has been happening, alright? But again, they are technically three different, separate legal and ethical questions. This has also given rise to the misconception that AI art generators are collage tools, where if you ask it for a castle on a hill, it'll simply take a castle and a hill from two different art pieces in its massive library that it was trained on and mash them together. It doesn't really work anything like that, and the AI community is all too eager to point and laugh at people who say that. This is without realizing that how it actually works has its own host of issues anyway. So how is the AI trained? These AI are built with machine learning. Let's say we want it to create a sunset for us. But to do that, it needs to understand what a sunset looks like, right? So it's given a library of text and image pairs, millions or even billions of them. Think of a Facebook photo captioned 2012 school dance of you in an ungodly, unfitting suit with hair that was deader than the Dead Sea. The AI has probably seen it. A lot of AI are trained by being told to pair these images and text descriptions correctly, and while it starts off guessing randomly, it's told how far off it is each time it gets it wrong, the error margin, and it uses the information it learned to get closer and closer, guessing again and again, till eventually it starts getting them right. Except AI doesn't see pictures throughout any of this, it doesn't understand the way we do, it is not cognitively capable of that. Despite the optimistic use of the term artificial intelligence, it is neither intelligent, nor sentient, nor creative, and nothing more than an extremely complicated computer program. No, the AI sees numerical values for each individual pixel, for the colors and shapes, patterns rendered down to zeros and ones. But as it starts getting millions of these text-to-image pairings right, eventually the AI builds an understanding of what collection of pixels, what organization of numbers looks like the term sunset. Of course, sunsets can look 1,000 different ways, so it has to understand the range of pixel and number arrangements that a sunset can generally cover. This is why AI is famously terrible at hands, because hands appear in an almost infinite variety of contortions with little consistency, and it's too goddamn dumb to really figure out what a 5-year-old can. But across this process, it doesn't really store any art or photos. It analyzes the image and passes it on. Only, how does it know the difference between a sunset, a lemon, and a light bulb? All three are yellowish, they're vaguely circular to provide an array of light. This is where having billions of images is critically important, because only with that breadth can it easily figure out the tiny mathematical differences between them. A lemon is more oval, a light bulb has this strange configuration of pixels in the middle, a sunset might be obscured by clouds or juxtaposed against a dark horizon. Most AI then use a complex process called diffusion, where it's given randomly generated noise and asked to diffuse that into, say, a sunset, sorting through the pixels with what it knows such that after thousands of iterations, when we give it the term sunset, it understands that not as a concept, but as a set of numerical values we call an image. Or maybe art? A smaller division of AI like ChatGPT use a generative adversarial network, which sort of pits two programs against each other to help them learn. It's a little more sophisticated, but a bit harder to train. And you've probably already noticed the problem at the bottom of all of this. Where do they get those images from? Lion is a non-profit organization which has collated over 5 billion images and videos of, well, just about everything. This is just a library of URL links for the most part. They make no claim of ownership, they don't really try to make money off it, but Their data does include scraping art and photography from sites like DeviantArt, Shutterstock, and Instagram. The problem is obvious. Programs like Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, DALL-E, and the others have trained their product on this library or others like it for profit, including the art of thousands of artists who did not give their consent and were not paid, all to create a program being used to create new images, yes, but also to prolifically steal their art and saturate the online marketplace with fraudulent copies people claim as their own. Now, the founder of Midjourney, David Holz, claims incorporating intellectual property into the development of an AI like this is totally fine. To my knowledge, every single large AI model is basically trained on stuff that's on the internet. And that's okay, right now. There are no laws specifically about that. Maybe in the future, there will be. Holz is either lying or being extremely negligent here. While copyright law hasn't caught up with AI specifically yet, if you want to create a product, software, a film, a car, and you want to incorporate something into its design, to sample a song, or to use something in its development, then you need a license. Foremost because you don't want people saying they own part of your AI because they contributed intellectual property to its development. Third-party datasets could be considered intellectual property that another company is contributing to AI. Data is a valuable form of currency. Companies may feel pressure to conduct exploratory research or modeling to determine what products or services might be possible before obtaining clearer rights. Proceed cautiously, as exploratory analytics could breach contracts, infringe another company's intellectual property, or give rise to other claims. The most typical response I've seen from a lot of AI people to this is that they don't need a license because, quote, the AI is just doing what humans have done for thousands of years, but quicker. And we will address that justification a lot more at this point in the video because it's wrong too, but I want to be clear, the law considers materially incorporating someone's intellectual property into the development of your for-profit product as very different to someone taking inspiration in the creative process. It should not surprise you that machines and humans do not have the same rights. They also bring up that programs like Midjourney are not trained to copy individual pieces. They don't even store them. They are trained to recognize colors and shapes and patterns and terms like expressionist and anime, none of which are copyrightable, that they do not understand the individual pieces that they are fed, only the aggregate of them. But the legal issue here is not that they are copying art and generating, but that in order to learn how to recognize those patterns, to learn how to emulate a particular artist, they still required a digital copy of that art as a product, acquired in a process called web scraping. Web scraping involves collating freely available information from the web you can just see for free on a website, usually huge amounts of it. A company might scrape prices from all across Amazon to figure out how to compete, and it is absolutely legal with two slight exceptions: copyrighted data and personal data, especially if you use it, and even more so if it's for profit, like Midjourney, like Stable Diffusion, like DALL-E. Crucially, freely available does not mean free to use. In fact, in both the EU and US, there is an exception for scraping huge amounts of copyrighted material to understand patterns and trends and data that humans wouldn't naturally be able to see on their own. But that exception is explicitly limited to non-commercial academic research. This is not that. In fact, of all copyrighted data, photos and art enjoy an especially high protection from web scraping. The fact that AI art doesn't look anything like the art that it's trained on is entirely and utterly irrelevant here, nor the fact that the AI doesn't hold on to the image. And honestly, after being in the AI community for a while now, this is just something that they don't really seem to understand or be aware of, or they just don't care. They seem to really fixate on this idea that like their art looks entirely different, and so it doesn't matter, and this is just a toy, and these people are getting in the way of their fun and the future. This is also, by the way, part of the basis of Getty Images' lawsuit filed in the High Court of London earlier this year against Stability AI. Hilariously, some AI used so many Shutterstock images that the watermarks started showing up. And this issue is not just something artists and lawyers are bringing up. Microsoft is absolutely aware of this problem as a tech company. In 2019, they released 3 different concepts for data sharing licenses for training AI, but they all required consent for that copyrighted data. Google itself has an AI music generator called Music LM. But refuses to release it because it acknowledged the intense risk of copyright abuse. And all of this is made ickier by the fact artists now have to compete for income and space online with a corporatized bastardization of their art. Fundamentally, these tech company art generators like Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, and DALL-E have exploited the labor of others without paying them. Theft. Their art should be removed from the dataset, and a new ethical AI should be trained in its place on public domain, Creative Commons, and volunteer or donated works. I should note this isn't universal. Japan just ruled copyright didn't apply to data used in AI training at all, but most of the Western world has erred on the other side so far. And none of this is to mention the host of other ethical issues there are in training an AI like this. Researchers at the SFI Software Research Center Lero removed 80 million images from a training dataset after discovering thousands of racist, sexist, and anti-Semitic phrases built into the data, which if used, would then propagate these sentiments in the use of the AI. One of the issues with training AI on existing data, on existing opinions and expressions, is that you ingrain biases and stereotypes and prejudices into it. And not only that, but these datasets include millions of non-consensual images of people, including children, including medical records, and the lack of filters on this process, especially because Stable Diffusion has now gone open source and people can run it locally on their pictures, means that people can use it to create anything, including child pornography. If you look at the top 1,000 used prompt terms in Stable Diffusion, it includes, quote, small breasts, young, and young girl in several variations, which doesn't mean anything on its own, but it certainly raises eyebrows. This is such an issue that I've seen it brought up in the AI community quite a few times before. So if we are building AI, what are we building it to do and think? But to return to the copyright issues with art and writing specifically, training an AI like this might be fair use. In 2015, the court ruled Google was allowed to scan thousands of copyrighted books to share snippets online, kind of like previews on Amazon. I mean, you've probably seen them before. It was ruled, quote, highly transformative, even for Google to use it as part of their profit-making empire, because it created, quote, significant public benefits, advances the progress of the arts and sciences, and has become an invaluable research tool for students, teachers, librarians, and others to more efficiently identify and locate books. It preserves books, in particular out of print and old books, and gives them new life. It facilitates access to books for print-disabled or remote and undeserved populations. It generates new audiences. And AI art is kind of like this in a way. Despite how people have painted it as art versus text, I've actually come to see just how many artists there are in the AI community. You know, people who were doing digital art or hand-drawn art before they moved over to doing stuff with AI. And they point out that, you know, there are totally legitimate and creative uses for AI, provided it was ethically trained. You can use it to generate ideas, which you then recreate or rework drastically till it becomes your art, you know, transformative, or you can train it on your artwork so that you can, you know, generate concept pieces faster than ever before, a quick way to do thumbnails in the early stages. An artist might use it to help them with parts of the process that they're not necessarily very good at yet, or they don't enjoy, or if they have to meet a deadline, while it's still very much being their art. It allows disabled artists to generate off their own past work and listen to how Stable Diffusion was used in a class for adults with learning disabilities. My mother teaches adults with learning disabilities, and one of the key problems is how a lot of them are held back by their motor skills or their reasoning, planning, perceiving outcomes. So I recommended scribblediffusion.com to her as a fun way to interact with AI image generation. The simple doodle plus prompt system is a low barrier to entry for people. She tried it for her learners, and the results were fantastic. They loved using it and were thrilled with the art they created because they could see the connection with what they drew and what they saw. They were able to express themselves in ways that would have been locked away from them by skill barriers they could mostly never hope to overcome, versus most people can learn to somewhat draw given enough time investment. I hope we can both recognize the value in that. And where animation used to require whole teams, it could potentially allow all those individuals to develop stories on their own. It can easily sharpen and colorize old photos and videos. It can easily, 3D render architecture and things like that. An animator friend of mine talks about how AI art has kind of been in their circles for a while, but it's been a tool in the creative process. The tiling feature allows game devs to create easily repeatable imagery like cobblestone or grass. All of these mean that AI generators could be described as transformative tools, creating new opportunities for artists and non-artists alike, facilitating access to new art, advancing, the progress of the arts, creating entirely new public benefits that were not there before, that would not be there if not for this derivative use. This technology is truly remarkable. There is no way around that. But that Google decision rested on 3 very important, critical material facts. And this is where these AI generators just entirely fall apart. 1. Where Google's copying elevated the status of the original work by pushing it to new audiences and making it available to people who did not have access before, AI art generators do none of that. They do not point the people who use it, nor the people who see the art, towards the copyright holders or the artists that they had to use to do all of this. Instead, it exploits the data to create something entirely disconnected that in no way highlights or preserves the original work, be it art or writing, and enables people to more easily steal or supersede the original work. On a mechanical level, this would be kind of impossible, given that technically any given AI image draws on the information of thousands, but in no way does it give the art new life, nor critique the original. In fact, it arguably erases any connection it has to the original. And in the words of an artist I admire, the art is instead cut up, sold to pay-to-use AI generators. My very soul that I use for my craft is being butchered brutally, and it's so painful. To say it gives the art a new purpose is kind of redundant when that purpose can in no way be traced back to that original art other than in the form of a decimal point in a corporate bank account. Secondly, it is also pretty clear to me that the Google case focuses on how it advances education and research, which have always been important for exceptions to fair use, especially in a non-commercial context. None of these apply here, regardless of the value they add as a tool, and so that dynamic shifts from elevatory to exploitative. One of the other really common justifications is that AI is just like photography, and anyone who has any questions about it is just a Luddite afraid of the future. But it's actually more like if the camera was first designed by taking a photo of every single landscape painter's work at the time without asking, and then being sold as a competitor. In time, the courts and legislation will adapt to this, and I hope to hell that they get it right. But until then, none of these companies have any incentive to change unless their user base does. But thirdly, and more importantly, the digitization does not provide a significant market substitute for the protected aspects of the originals, and in fact enhances the sales of books to the benefit of the copyright holders. This is by far the most important factor in fair use, and we've already established that it certainly doesn't help sales because it virtually erases any connection to the art it could possibly have. But we have to come back to Elect Defense's case from before, as well as dozens of other scams where people have created slight variations on people's art and claimed it as their own, even selling it on and pretending to be hand-drawn artists or digital artists, sometimes directly competing with the very artists the AI clearly copies from. These AIs were also clearly built with the image-to-image feature, which enables the creation of market substitutes like this. In other cases, people can give the AI a text prompt so specific that it can't help but overfit and generate an image near identical to an artist's work. Or they might use textual inversion, feed an artist's works into it and create more like it, instead of commissioning them. On a fundamental level, where Google enhanced the sales of books, you could argue these AI generators are built to carve into the income an artist might earn from their copyrighted work that gets fed into the machine. And that makes it even less likely using data like this would count as fair use, especially considering it would have been easy for them to license it. Except, even though this feels innately wrong, you might have already seen the problem with this argument. The companies like Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, and DALL-E are not the ones creating market substitutes and competing with artists. It's the users. The AI itself is just code that doesn't do anything automatically. You've got to remember that these programs being built on stolen art and being used to steal are two different separate ethical and legal issues. And even though I think they both share some responsibility, proving that legally is pretty difficult. To make AI companies responsible for something like this, you'd have to argue that they are vicarious or contributory infringers. Think of it like Pirate Bay, right? The actual code itself might be perfectly legal. It is a platform for file sharing. But, we all know that people use that platform to infringe copyright massively, and the law asks if Pirate Bay enables that to the point that they become responsible. And in just 2017, the European Court of Justice ruled that they were because, quote, the operators of the platform play an essential role in making those works available. The standard is similar in the US. And to be clear, the law is typically very reluctant to call tech companies like this contributory infringers. Photoshop is not responsible for what its users do, despite the fact it too is used prolifically in illegal activities. So to be that, it really requires knowledge of the infringement and materially contributing to it. Out of the three issues, you would need to argue that it was designed to steal. One case suggests that you would need to advertise the infringement.
Pirate Bay's logo is a goddamn pirate ship, and their FAQ says it's easy to share large files like TV shows, movies, apps, ebooks, videos, audio files, and games on this site. They're not exactly subtle.
And while these companies definitely say you can get any art you want instantly, that's not really the same thing as saying you can get your favorite artist's work absolutely for free. Another case of vicarious infringement pointed out how a technology was designed not to check for copyright, so the company could throw their hands up and say, hey, we didn't know. And kind of like that, AI generators are not designed to check for copyright, when they could have blocked the use of certain artists' names, or just vetted the dataset they were working with, or coded it to prevent it taking too much from a similar set of images. But they didn't.
But even then, I'm not sure this would stand up in court. They're not exactly pulling a Pirate Bay.
Now, AI tech bros love to point out that AI is only trained to identify and emulate specific patterns and concepts like a sunset. But the reality is, it is just as much trained to emulate specific artists. It does not know the difference, it only knows the terms, and it is only going to get better at that. It would not be able to easily produce works in the style of, say, WLOP or Xandra art, or to create market substitutes of textual inversion which people then sell off and claim as their own, if it was not first trained on their art without their consent. And this is definitely more of a feature than a bug for these corporations.
One recent Harvard study tested AI on emulating the style of 62 professional digital artists and found that they could be successfully imitated up to 93% of the time by Stable Diffusion. And it's important to note that with AI still in its infancy, this will only get better.
I have spent months scrolling through thousands of prompts people use in Midjourney, DALL-E, and Stable Diffusion generators, and it is incredibly common for people to use the names of artists in their prompts. Thomas Kincaid came up over 25,000 times. Greg Rakowski over 128,000. But WLOP, an incredibly skilled artist whose illustrations have become prolific on YouTube, was used over 144,000 times. Ghibli, another 172,000 times. Even small artists come up hundreds of times, and I can already hear people typing away in the comments, you can't copyright styles, you can't copyright ideas. If I wanted to, I could go right now to an independent artist and I could say, hey, draw me a piece of art of me happy and fulfilled and not constantly spiraling in the style of WLOP. And I could. That'd be perfectly legal. But to understand how people are using AI generators, we really need to understand LoRa's, Dreambooth, hypernetworks, and textual inversion. One of the problems with AI generators is how difficult it is to get consistent imagery. The same face, the same clothes, the same background, even the same style. They each work slightly differently on a technical level, but these are 4 different ways of handling that by training the AI to recognize more specific images or styles. You might insert your own face into art for your D&D character by training it on a set of images of your face at different angles. But this is not how most people use these features most of the time. These images were made using a Sam Does Art's LoRa. Sam Yang is an incredibly skilled independent artist whose characters have become somewhat iconic online, and this LoRa was built on his art so others could replicate his distinctive style. Not only are AI companies feeding people's art into the machine, but the users here are not learning nor are they imitating, they're putting intellectual property into a machine to instantly generate from it for themselves, in an even more concentrated way with a much more direct line between the art given and the art generated. People should have the right to sell their art as data for this purpose. This isn't learning or imitating someone's style, this is doing something materially to the art as a product. If you want to practice this art style on your own, go ahead, but if you want to feed someone's intellectual property into a machine, get a license for that. So it's not just people using names in prompts. You're not commissioning an artist or creating something yourself with a specific point of inspiration. It is deriving a product from their data and their art without any attribution, payment, or credit. The strangest thing, though, is that it is very common for people in the AI community to sell models and LoRa's in certain styles that they put together because they want to be compensated for what they think is their work. But then they also don't really seem to see how the artists that those LoRa's and models are built off should be compensated, when they are even more directly responsible for how those models and LoRa's look. Maybe it's hypocrisy, maybe it's ignorance, maybe it's Maybelline, I don't know. Now, sometimes people use the name of several artists in their prompts, or they use one because it's more for the vibe than they specifically want that. But I think this does demonstrate what people are trying to do with these generators a lot of the time. Find a way to get art from someone quickly and cheaply that they can claim as their own by buying a corporate product built on their art without their consent. And artists rightfully hate that. The people who say that artists are just being Luddites here are missing the point that it's not that the technology can't be useful, but how it's being created and how it's continuing to be used. Now, there are tons of people who use AI to make stuff that looks entirely new and don't want to emulate artists at all, but those people aren't immune from the problems of using an unethically trained technology in the first place. It's not a get-out-of-jail-free card. And the CEOs and tech leaders behind these technologies have repeatedly demonstrated a reckless disregard for art, for copyright, and privacy. Did you see consent from living artists for work still under copyright? No. There isn't really a way to get 100 million images and know where they're coming from. It would be cool if images had metadata embedded in them about copyright or something, but that's not a thing. There's not a registry. There is no way to find a picture on the internet and then automatically trace it to an owner and have any way of doing anything to authenticate it. We haven't encountered anyone who wants their name taken out of the dataset that we could actually find in the dataset. Can artists opt out of being named in prompts? Not right now. We're looking into that. Holtz basically just said there, yeah, it was too hard, so we didn't bother. Here's the CEO of Stable Diffusion, Ahmad Mostak, explicitly saying he'd be willing to go behind firewalls to get the, quote, private data in order to improve his AI. I think Jim O'Shaughnessy, the executive chair of Stability AI, gives a little bit of insight into how a lot of these people think. Victory did not come to the one who played by the rules. It came to the one who made the rules and imposed them on his enemy. Oh, frankly, his whole Twitter is filled with hashtag I'm 14 and this is deep cringe like that. But there is a through line here of these people knowing that there is an issue, but they don't care enough to solve it. But honestly, I'm not sure if any of these steps could be seen legally as them taking affirmative steps to foster infringement, especially if they don't advertise it, at least not explicitly, and a variety of AI developers have responded to this backlash differently. Some have doubled down on the stealing and just flaunting it, but others have offered an opt-out option in new versions of their AI. Some 80 million images were removed in response to that. It was opt-out, which to me says that they knew they needed the images and wanted to get away with as many as possible, but it is a better option than having no opt-out at all. I don't really know which way the courts would go on this. We will have to see as it plays out. The last legal issue is whether AI art counts as a derivative work, a work based upon one or more pre-existing works. A work may be recast, transformed, or adapted. Artists and authors have an exclusive right to make derivative works of their stuff, like adapting a book into a film or a sculpture derived from a photo you took. This is what a class action lawsuit in the US is alleging, and it rests on a couple of things. So, unlike if I go to an artist and I say, hey, give me a sketch in the style of WLOP of a sunset, who then goes away and they do something similar, but it's original, informed by their own style and their own creative ideas brought to the art. The AI's understanding of that same request, if I ask it for a sunset, is entirely derived from the art that it was trained on. It is dependent on it in a very concrete, data-driven way, not through any independent experience of its own. In this way, you could argue that pretty much all AI art is derived from the masses of art that it is trained on because it cannot imagine anything else. However, this is really one of those cases where the law just isn't quite equipped yet to deal with these sorts of questions, because derivative works, traditionally, are about taking a substantial portion of the work, the characters, the story, the framing, the composition, that sort of thing. But an AI just doesn't really work like this, and any given image technically draws on the information of thousands, unless we're talking about, Elect Offence's case, but in that case, that's coming back to the Photoshop. Are they responsible for that use issue? This would force an expansion of the term derivative, more to do with the data usage, that we've never really seen before. It's also pretty clear using something like a Sam Yang Laura would make your art derivative, but again, the user is more responsible here. But I want to level with you. Put aside the legal issues for a moment. The law should not be our only measure of reality in this sort of thing. There is something deeply god-awful about this whole process. You're not only cutting out the artist who did the original work when you're trying to create something like theirs, but you're not even commissioning an artist who would bring their own creative flair to that process, something that artists have been totally on board with for the most part. Instead, people are using this program built on their art without their consent, without paying them, and giving that money to a corporation instead. You're not learning or imitating someone's style for yourself, but giving a computer laws and hypernetworks built on someone else's work. The worst AI tech bros love to insist that in 10 years' time, AI will be so good that there will be no need for artists at all. And yet, if this technology is going to significantly improve, it will continue to need artists, be it for training the AI or the extensions or laws people use. And yet, so many people who use AI just have this utter disdain for them. I have rarely seen anything like it. And it's not all AI people, but there is definitely this nexus in there that just wish desperately art was just a collection of pixels they could monopolize and repackage and sell on, and not something people express themselves with, that is they are deeply entwined with, that they are deeply attached to, that is as much them as anything else could be. That hurts when big companies do this to them. The human elements are inconvenient hurdles to the perfect product. Confronted with this, that nexus in the AI community loves to say things like,
the technology is already here, you can't stop it, so just get over it, stop whining.
Don't have, and I saw this a few times, don't have this hashtag victim mindset, as if that means anything. Revolutionary technology like this always makes waves before the law and ethics catches up with them. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't embrace the technology, but Court cases and legislation are it's our best attempt at trying to ensure it is integrated into society in an ethical way. The internet rapidly changed our world once it arrived on the scene, but it too left a trail of court cases and legislation in its wake. It's easy to imagine this as the next great creative revolution, but it could just as easily be another corporate-dominated field that saturates the market whilst cutting out people on whose work it was built financially and creatively, if we aren't careful. This misses the fact that we have already allowed certain corporate practices and technologies to become commonplace in society, which we now resent. Microtransactions, widespread digital surveillance, corporations owning and selling our data, gambling for children, loot boxes. Each of these things sprung from new technologies being so quickly and excitedly embraced without thinking how corporations or the like will use them. Digital privacy continues to be a painful clawback all across the globe, which companies continue to strongly lobby against. I think this time, we might just be ahead of the curve. Technology upheaves society, of course it does, but all too often corporations monopolize it. They try to get away with everything they can ethically before the law catches up with them, by which time they're well-established leaders in their field, like they're doing now. And the stupid thing is, out of all of this situation could have been avoided if these AI were just trained right. On Creative Commons material, or stuff in the public domain, or artwork volunteered by people who wanted to help, even if it still managed to create art a little like Sam Yang's, this would not be the same ethical issue. How do I know that? How do I know that, you ask? Because we've done it before. With Dance Diffusion, a program built to generate music from purely public domain, volunteered, or licensed material that nobody really has an issue with. Nobody's work is stolen, and it's not facilitating theft. And you know what the most ridiculous thing is? Dance Diffusion was developed by the same people as Stable Diffusion. Yeah, the people who are facilitating all of this in the art world. It might be difficult to fathom how such incredible hypocrisy exists within the same company because they insisted that it was really important that they not infringe on copyright. But hear me out, I think it's pretty simple. See, the music industry is extremely prone to suing over its intellectual property, partly because it is dominated by these huge media conglomerates with a lot of money and power. Art, on the other hand, is far more decentralized, made up of millions of independent actors who could not levy the same resources against them. And they made a calculation. It was far more profitable and with far less risk to steal people's work and feed it into the machine in the art world than it was in the music one, not out of any conviction over fair use. So I don't want to hear any excuses that this had to happen or it's inevitable when it clearly isn't. It was just quicker, cheaper, and easier to do it to get an edge on their competitors. Because that's what this is about. It is a tale as old as time. Companies beating down on people who have little recourse against them, and people giving them money to do it because it's fun and they just don't care enough. These systems did not have to be developed this way, and we know that because more and more AI are being developed every day with fewer ethical issues. I mean, Adobe Firefly touts itself as being trained on, quote, Adobe-owned stock images, openly licensed content, and public domain imagery, and it's even got a system to pay people who contribute to that image bank. It's not perfect as a system, but the company is seemingly aware of, well, let's be honest, the legal liability more than acting out of ethical restraint, but still, AI people respond to this saying things like they're quick to defend copyright like this, but also to say it's horrendously outdated when it suits them. Because, yes, Disney lobbying to retain copyright to its characters for decades beyond end is a different ethical issue to whether tech companies should feed the art of living, often poor artists, into a machine. Those are different issues, yes, and people can have nuanced takes on copyright. I do want to be fair here. A lot of artists speak about the AI community as some kind of monolith, but they are very divided over what AI means as well. You know, some don't claim to have been the artist of what they generate, that it's theirs at all, seeing themselves more as someone who commissions the art, or as a composer before someone performs it. Others don't post it publicly because they know about these ethical issues, or they have a lot of empathy for artists, you know, the fears of losing their jobs, but they don't necessarily understand all of the issues behind that.
At least half of them just kind of want to fiddle around with this new, constantly evolving technology and have a bit of fun. They're not selling it or ever going to commission anyone, just want to be on the frontier of these new advancements.
There were also a lot of artists who spoke about their love for drawing or painting or creating, but they've never had the time to invest in that because they've been stuck in a dead-end job or they've been not mentally there for it. And this has finally given them a creative outlet to do that. And honestly, I have some real sympathy for that. The ability for anyone to create, no matter how much money, time, or opportunity they have had to realize their dreams, sounds amazing. Having time is a luxury, but these people are a minority. And I've seen this very same community write some really monstrous stuff about artists, wishing that they would go out of work so they will learn their lesson for resisting change. Or when artists were protesting AI being trained on their work without their consent, they were making images like this. And there were whole pages in these communities dedicated to people laughing at them and using those very images as prompts to make ones kinda like it and go, haha, look, aren't they funny? A lot of them are wearing these techno-futuristic, utopian tinted glasses and have a lot of resentment for the artists that they view as just getting in the way of them having fun and expressing themselves, you know, like saying you can't post AI art on this Reddit or in this Discord. They paint artists as elitist here, because they dare ask for minimum wage when they do a commission, and now they can finally afford custom art. But it's pretty important to note that all of this, it's not undermining the elitist art market, it's not doing a thing to it. It's hurting the independent artists who are struggling to survive anyway. Because admitting something went wrong here wouldn't just implicate them in using the AIs, but this dream that so many of them seem to have of quickly and easily creating art or anime or films that would have used to have taken them years of training and learning and study and production, all of those dreams would go up in smoke if they admitted to that. If they recognize these issues. They are clinging more to what they can get out of the AI art generators than really thinking about what they are doing. The worst breed of whom, and it is certainly not all of them, view AI as a way to win at art, as just another way to hustle, to lock in their NFTs as a cheap and easy way to get quickly published in places like Clarkesworld, or write articles that gets clicks quicker than ever before, or to snap up a few art competitions, not by the quality of their art, but by the sheer numbers of competitions they can submit to with little time or thought. Who will #grindset their way to the top by commodifying personal expression as much as possible, and who see artists as just an obstacle to their get-rich-quick scheme that they just wish would shut up, because all of this is a legal technicality. If you look up AI art on YouTube, it's not long before you find people going, how to make $10,000 every day with AI. There's also something incredibly funny about people demanding to be taken seriously as artists or writers because they typed big titty anime girl into an art generator while throwing a tantrum because the people on whose skills and work their entire ability to make anything in the first place depends are asking them to think a little bit about what they're doing. And I'm not just making this up, this is something of a meme inside the AI art community itself. So, to use Stable Diffusion, you need to download these things called models, and they're kind of like libraries of certain types of images, you know, anime, fantasy landscape, hyper-realistic. And one guy posted a little while ago saying, hey, is anyone finding it difficult to find the right models because it's just absolutely flooded with waifu hentai stuff? And if you look at the top 1,000 used terms in Stable Diffusion, half of it is just waifu stuff. And hey, all power to you, you do you, but it is also a little funny when this is being held up as the future of art. Actually, this is the one reason that I know this technology is going to stick around, because we can use it for porn. Even so, when we talk about technologies being disruptive, this is not what we usually mean. But we're talking about art here, what it means to create, what it means to express ourselves, how we relate to one another, how we grow as individuals and as a society, how we figure out what this so-called existence is meant to mean and be, and the role of art in that, and how it really works, what it really is. And that goes well beyond the realm of lore. And it does bring us to the AI community's favorite line, which is, the AI is just doing what humans have done for thousands of years. Alright, let's talk about that. A few years ago, I read Jeff Vandermeer's Annihilation, and I don't know where my copy of Annihilation is, so you'll have to deal with Jeff Vandermeer's Dead Astronauts, which is also good. But I loved Annihilation. I loved its style, I loved its concept, I loved the writing, the themes, and so I wrote a story about scientists in the wild encountering strange alien natural phenomena called The Flight of 10,000 Moths. It's my work, but there's clearly inspiration there. No one is going to think for a second it's derived from Annihilation. Vandermeer's not going to sue me. And we take pieces from stories and art around us all the time in subtle ways we may not even be cognitively aware, and we collate thousands of stories together into something we call the human experience. And we use that in creating art. In the sense, you might be tempted to say that nothing is truly original. Isn't AI just doing that more efficiently? Because if that's the case, then it's scraping the internet for art and stories is no real different to a human trying to do the same, and copyright law hasn't caught up with that. This line of thinking is compelling in a way. Any given image the AI is trained on is like 0.000000001 of its learning. Some programs like DALL-E even use a particular model of AI training called deep learning, which is designed to mimic the neural networks of the human mind and how we understand things. And the kicker is, most of the time, AI art does look entirely original. I typed in the end of the world, planets in the sky, leaves all over the ground, and a human looking up to the stars while Earth is about to be destroyed. And this is the image it gave me. This image has never been seen before. If an artist drew something like this by hand, then they would be the artist. This would be their art, no matter who they were influenced by. Take a look at these two different pieces, one by Philip Su and one by H300. Compositionally, they're kinda similar, both have clouds wisping into the air, a lone figure on a plain of green with red flowers dotting the landscape, and even if one of them was inspired by the other, I think most people would reasonably agree that they each own these two separate pieces. They're not derivative or market substitutes. What I came to understand inside the AI community was that on a really instinctual level for people using AI, this doesn't feel that different. Even if you use an artist name in a prompt, even if it's compositionally similar to another work, even if it's using textual inversion and you're generating off someone's entire portfolio, it's rarely identical and it could still belong to me. What an intoxicating idea, how alluring. I could have made that. I'm just being more efficient by using AI, speeding up the process. Like a photographer over a portrait painter, it's still my art. After all, digital tools and things like Photoshop have made things that used to be done by hand 10 times quicker as well. Motion capture has totally transformed the process of capturing human movement. Where animation studios used to rely on pure hand-drawn rotoscoping, painstakingly tracing over live footage for realistic movements, After Effects now makes that process quicker. Isn't this just automating a different part of that process? Well, no. First off, the inability of AI to add anything original to its, quote, inspirations makes it different. Inspirations are helpful to humans, but not essential, whereas the AI is utterly dependent on the art it was fed. I mean, the stories I write are not just me computing my inspirations and generating a collection of ordered words in a new way not seen before. They are reinterpreted through my own personal, subjective experience, my passions, my biases. Even if I draw from other works, intentionally or not, the end result is inevitably filtered through my personal experiences to create something original, even in ways that I am not necessarily aware. The added originality is most often the point of it. But more importantly, I get a hell of a lot personally out of the act of creation itself. In drawing on Annihilation or Paper Towns or, E&M Banks, as I grapple with and deepen the ideas as a love letter to those stories and what they talk about. Like, for me personally, in writing, I talk about things that I am dwelling on, that I am trying to wrestle with and figure out. The act of creation is my process of doing that. That process is, in a very real sense, us growing as people, as a society, relating to one another. And it is what makes that constant exchange of inspiration between the art that we see and the art that we make morally valuable and legally essential. We have for a long time recognized human inspiration and the creation of art as a two-way conversation worth protecting, both within ourselves and with wider society, and the original artists that we are drawing on. It's why we protect the right of people to digest art this way, but do not afford that same right to machines. We can call this artistic cognition, because without cognitive awareness of what we are creating, without the capacity to be impacted in these ways, it becomes a very different process that we would not regard nearly as valuable, morally or legally. AIs like Midjourney do not have the psychological capacity to be inspired or creative. It does not use inspiration, it uses samples. It does not experience passion or thought or love, and its outputs are not any material expression of that. It is not changed in the process, nor does it experience growth in the act of creation. It is not engaging with the art as it learns, merely capitalizing on it, and not even for itself, but for someone else. In other words, exploitation. Here's the critical thing. An AI is speedrunning the end result of that process, but not the actual process that makes it socially and morally valuable, and therefore legally protectable. In other words, if, like AI, humans could blindly generate new art without any cognitive awareness of what they were making, entirely unaffected by whatever they made, we would not care to protect that process legally or value it socially as much as we do. This is why artists are fine with others using their work for inspiration, but not an AI feeding on their work, because they recognize that two-way conversation in the former, but not the latter. And to be clear, this is not to say it isn't real art. There's been a bit of a knee-jerk reaction in the art community to say AI art isn't real art, and the AI community is all too happy to point out that once upon a time there was a tiny subsection of artists who said that digital art wasn't real art, till they realize, of course it was, and then they insist that this is just the same, a new set of tools, a new set of skills. People have also insisted that it's inherently ugly and soulless and meaningless because the AI has no intention, and you can always tell by looking at it. But this is not the hill to die on. This has never been a winning battle, and it never will be. Artistic meaning is found in two places. It is found in the artist, and it is found in the audience. A lot of AI art is beautiful, there's no getting around that, and I'm sure some people have found meaning in it. Not me personally, but some other people. We can call this the Westworld problem.
Are you real?
Well, if you can't tell, does it matter?
Because, one day we will not be able to tell. But if I stick a banana to a wall and call it art, I think it's pretty low effort, pretty uninteresting art, but it is art. If an AI generates this without any human input, it's still art because of the meaning we find in it. No. The more interesting question here is whether someone using an AI art generator is still the artist. You might think we're getting into some pretty mumbo-jumbo philosophical waters about what makes someone an artist. And we are, but there is also a legal basis for this as well.
And it does matter, because if you are the artist, then your work should be protected.
Laws differ from country to country, of course, but most copyright law in the world requires human authorship, or some variation of it. Copyright law is designed to regulate how we interact as individuals, to protect what we create that's personal to us, and built into that doctrine is two things. Art is expression, and that you created it. The social value of the art doesn't matter, the medium doesn't matter, nor the skills used to make it, nor how creative it is, nor what it expresses, but this is what humans have been doing for thousands of years, and an AI obviously can't satisfy the first condition. It cannot express, and so it should not be legally protected in the same way. Unless you think it's sentient, which it's not. Unless people who know a lot more than me about artificial intelligence start saying that ChatGPT is anything closer to that, I just don't really care. I do want to mention that the law is meant to regulate how we interact as individuals when we can basically come into clashes against one another over ownership and creation and stuff like that. So that's only one part of art. Art does go bigger than this, but the law is only going to touch the part that really needs to regulate individuals. Okay, the AI can't express itself or be inspired, sure. But perhaps AI art can be an expression of the prompter, of their artistic cognition. Well, legally, this is a spectrum, with one end being totally artificially created and so not copyrightable, and the other being totally human created, largely because philosophically it's also a scale for us, at least if you want to be considered the artist. Maybe I create a half-drunk glass of milk by leaving it on the counter, but I don't intend it as artistic expression, so it's not my art. Likewise, I can intend a waterfall to be representative of my deep, gushing, existential pain, but I didn't create it or photograph it or anything, so I'm not the artist. But then it starts to get a little murky. Let me introduce you to Naruto. In 2008, photographer David Slater traveled to Indonesia to photograph some endangered monkeys. He had to travel to a remote location, befriend the monkeys over several days, and set up his expensive equipment in a detailed enough way to prompt them to take his camera till, soon enough, one did, and took hundreds of photos, including this one. It took a lot of trial and error on Slater's part, basically trying to manufacture an interesting photo, even if he didn't have full control over what that photo would be. But in 2014, the US Copyright Office declined copyright protection, saying there was insufficient creative input or human intervention, even after his hours and days of work towards it. Funnily enough, Peter actually took this case to court and tried to get Naruto the copyright. It didn't work. See, people spend days trying to manufacture the perfect prompt. Like, really, I do genuinely mean that. Not unlike David Slater, they manufacture the circumstances in which the image is created, even if they aren't totally in control of what that image might be. The court felt this photo was too far down that spectrum, too artificially created, or not human created more so. But it's easy to imagine a world in which this actually was his copyright, despite how much of the process was outside his control. I am not interested in whether AI art is real art. That is not the hill to die on, it is not a winning battle, and it never has been. But there are different relationships we can have with a piece of art that define the artist, legally and conceptually. You can be a commissioner who might offer a rough sketch or feedback to the artist to tweak things. You could be a collaborator who does a significant part of the work. You could be the muse who is painted in the picture, or a performer of someone else's composition, an editor who offers feedback that gets incorporated into the work. Or you can be the worker with the most direct line to the art, who uses an array of tools at their disposal. Each of these were all involved in some capacity in the creation of the art, but they describe different relationships with that art, only a couple of which we would sensibly regard as being the artist. One of the reasons Andy Serkis, who played the motion-captured Gollum in Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings trilogy, was excluded from the Best Actor category
was because the visuals were too much of a collaboration between Circus and the CGI artists to say that the performance was entirely his, that it was purely the best actor. The artistry was too divided there too. Now, the lore tries to mimic this understanding of the relationship someone has with art by giving the artist copyright. Now, legally and ethically, these are two different questions sometimes. A company might own the copyright to all of the work a concept artist does while employed by them, but we would still conceptually regard them as the artist, not the company, even if the company tells them what to draw, because of that relationship they have with the art. We also exclude animals like Naruto from owning copyright because they're not human, even though we could conceptually regard Naruto as the artist. Now, just put aside how companies like Midjourney technically claim copyright over every single piece their AI generates, and think about the question underneath. What relationship do AI artists have with their art? And so, we come to the AI community's second favorite line. A few months ago, the US Copyright Office rejected an application for a comic allegedly created by Kristina Kashtanova called Zarya of the Dawn, entirely composed of Midjourney generated imagery that looks uncannily like Zendaya. Now, the Copyright Office decided it was too far down that spectrum, just like David Slater's photo. It's now pending review. The text was written by Kashtanova, so that was protected, as well as the creative arrangement of those images. They arose out of that artistic cognition, but not the images themselves because they, quote, are not the product of human authorship, despite her using hundreds of thousands of text prompts and iterations to get there. Now, I was watching when this decision dropped, and it made waves in the AI community. It made people angry, demoralized, suddenly their dreams were being dashed against the rocks. This amazing technology wasn't going to be able to help them to become the professional artists and authors they wished to be. This sort of feeling was all over the place. Using Midjourney to generate the art is no less human authorship than programming Space Invaders or Pac-Man. A human puts in the time and language to get a result, decides which result will work with the project at hand, exactly like every single art director or museum curator or managing editor in history has done. Putting aside that none of the people mentioned there typically own what they're sorting through, if AI is a tool, then AI artists have that artistic relationship just like people who use Photoshop or motion capture, which have otherwise become ubiquitous in the creative process elsewhere, you know? They change how we work and they equip us to do new things that we couldn't before in a new medium. Now, importantly, to call something your art in copyright, or in art conceptually really, it doesn't require much originality or creativity or time, but it does require that you make it. And the truth is, after spending time in this community and with these programs, I think AI art can arise with each of these relationships. Like if you spend a little while spitballing ideas, picking the right inspirations, tweaking the work that comes back, naming the piece, that sounds a lot more like a commissioner relationship than a working artist one. Someone or something else takes your ideas and tries to bring them to life. Others would generate art and spend dozens of hours giving it the right positive and negative prompts, even touching it up a little themselves at the end in Photoshop or whatever, fixing the hands, a few details here and there, and that sounds a lot more like an editor or quality assurance. But then there's a bit more autonomy. Zarya in the Dawn involved hundreds or even thousands of prompts. She wrote a whole script that gave it context, designed where the images went, gave it a narrative, and that sounds a lot closer to a collaborator, where both are artists, but you can't claim full credit for the total work. But then we can go one step further. I've seen people train AI on their own art portfolio they've put together over the years, and then using various plugins and settings, ControlNet and LoRa's, they slightly alter their work or generate new ideas from themselves, which they then take and use and rework into something totally new, refine and recolor, and now that sounds a lot more like that worker relationship, doesn't it? Or if you generate an image and rework it manually to such a degree that it becomes yours. All of this means that when you look at the actual work done to create the art, at what it expresses, at the creative decisions, we can see so much more of that human and authorship.
there is a lot more of that artistic cognition coming through. So it can be reduced to a tool, it can be part of that creative process. There are already plugins that give the user a bit more creative control. You can specify where certain things will appear in the image compositionally, or one that lets you draw on the art to give it more specific changes, or one which lets you design the pose a character might sort of take in an image. ControlNet allows people to sketch a rough image, and then it takes that and does all of the detail and coloring with the other inputs you give it, the prompt, the model, the LoRa. None of this is really enough to truly control how the image looks, but this technology is only going to evolve, and I don't know how far it's going to go. Maybe one day it might involve a bit of coding and a whole new language to speak to the AI, a host of new tools, but you might be able to control every element of the image. I don't know. Then maybe, as drawing uses graphite and photography uses light, this could be using coding and words as a whole new basis to control an image. And suddenly, that sounds a lot more like a new medium to me.
And I need to emphasize here that this technology will inevitably evolve to give people more control over what is generated. That's what people want. There's already a tool called inpainting, which allows you to select a specific area of an image generated to change, like a hand or the bottom corner, and then the new prompt you give it will only change that area. Take that technology to its logical conclusion, and a decade from now, people will be able to refine details in the ways they want through text. The technology is still hit or miss at the moment. You can't really control how it generates the details, only give it suggestions and roll the dice. But we have to think about where the technology will be in the years to come and not where it is now. It's easy to mock AI hand generators as being terrible because they are, and it's hilarious. But remember, this is what they could do a year ago, and this is what it can do now. That relationship of control is only going to increase. And we need to acknowledge that. Provided it's ethically built, it does have the potential to be a good tool.
But it's just not there yet. It's not. And here's the thing. The vast, and I mean the oceanic vast majority of AI art by a goddamn light year is generated not with all of those tools and whatever, but simply from a very short text prompt, probably less than 20 words long. Actually, no, I did some statistics. I went through hundreds of Midjourney prompts and calculated the average length of a prompt was just 13 words, which they then take and claim as something they made as their art. And maybe they went through a couple of variations, but this is barely commissioning a piece other than just asking for something to come into existence, especially when all of the creative decisions and the work is done by the AI or by the coders of the AI. The coloring, the composition, the tone, the positioning of tiny details, the actual decisions and how the art is, even when using that array of tools, there is still this huge creative gap between input and output. There's no way to escape it. The actual output being decided primarily by systems well beyond the user. The vast majority of people are just not creatively engaged in this process in any meaningful way. And so it isn't their art. It just isn't. They didn't make it. And that's okay. It's fine to just be a small part of how some piece of art came to be. It can still be cool. It can still be valuable. And I get where this desire to say you made it comes from. It's a lot of work to learn these skills and a lot of time, and even once you've got the skills and the time, it feels impossibly hard to get noticed anyway. I'm lucky enough that I've been published in a bunch of short story magazines, but I am 6 rejections deep for my fiction novel now, and it sucks. I wish I could just instantly make a masterpiece and call it my own. AI artists will often point out how many hours it took them to make an image happen, hundreds of them even, but it doesn't really matter how many hours a commissioner spends searching for the right artist, or inspiration images, or brainstorming ideas. They're still not the artist. And all of this is poisoned because there's this unfortunate subclass of techno-futurists who think they can side hustle their way to being Thomas Kincaid, and that's to say nothing of the uncanny crossover there is between the AI community, NFTs, and crypto, which themselves have been sold as get-rich-quick schemes to millions.
This is
That's
your
smart.
ape. Are we debuting
It's
it?
really cool.
And are also rife with huge amounts of fraud sold as the inevitable future, including thousands of con artists trying to cash in on new technology people don't understand before the bubble pops. These same people insist AI art is amazing because it not only lets you skip steps, but virtually the entire process, while not really understanding that those creative decisions, coloring, editing, composition, structure, phrasing, are where creative intent and expression and human authorship are found. All of this is why saying I created this leaves such a sour taste in the mouths of many. And this is not to say people aren't expressing themselves. People feel they are, and so they are. But at the moment, the vast majority cannot and are not exhibiting that expression in authorship, but in the ideas as a basis, like a commissioner. Or how you might share someone else's art because it resonates with you. But, you might say, there are a ton of art forms where we use mechanistic processes outside of our control to create art. Jackson Pollock famously dashed paint across a canvas from a distance, with the end result being at least a little bit out of his control, or spinning a bucket of paint across a canvas. Composer John Cage used a series of chance mechanisms to determine the composition of his music. But in each of those, there is still a strong relationship of control between the artist and their art, and the artist designed the mechanistic processes involved in its creation, the likes of which I have very rarely seen in the vast majority of people making AI art. The thing about tools, like this one here, is that they are under our control. They do what we want. And one of the things that came up over and over in the AI community was that people would post their AI art and others would ask, hey, how did you do this? How did you achieve that? You know, those hands, that clarity, that specific detail, and virtually every single time, they just had no clue. Or they certainly couldn't help anyone else replicate it, where Pollock and Cage could. That disconnect says a lot to me. It's very difficult to get consistent imagery, especially in the details. And to be honest, if you're someone like this guy who, quote,
Love seeing all the artists crying now that I can make art better than them by using some key words and they don't like it but are powerless to stop it,
I think you're not only an absolute prick, but you're bloody delusional. You did not create it, you're using someone else's coding as a crutch. On the other hand, if you designed the AI, if you coded how it thinks and gave it a prompt, then maybe you are the artist. You designed the mechanistic processes and used it more as a tool, kind of like a bucket of paint. The AI plays a huge role, but only by your design. Artists exercise control. They can predict what it'll look like in advance, and it's almost impossible to have any meaningful control over an AI image down to the details. You're just giving suggestions more often than not. I don't know how that would go legally, but I mean, it's kind of irrelevant because the companies designing these AI are making money by selling it to other people and not by using the art that it generates. But if art is about creation and expression, if it's about using an array of tools to create something that comes from you, even if it's a product, then it follows that you have to be a major participant in that process and what it expresses. And to be clear, this is not to say that art requires a lot of work, you know, philosophically or legally. Hang on. Alright. Look! My art! We're gonna give him a little happy face. The tongue and ears and... See? My art! But you do have to do the work, however small, especially enough to at least cognitively understand how it happened. I made this using some tools. And again, maybe, sure, yeah, in the future people might be able to exercise that amount of control. For a long time, getting the same consistent face in AI art has been near impossible. But now there are ways to control that. People can sort of answer that question. And how did you do it? Well, I trained it on this many photos and used this plugin, these settings.
that relationship of control is growing in some places. Users can answer the how you did that question. One day, it'll be able to create consistent backgrounds. And the technology is already sorta starting to do that. And this is the reasoning the US Copyright Office came to about Zarya and the Dawn as well. The process by which a Midjourney user obtains an ultimate satisfactory image through the tool is not the same as that of a human artist, writer, or photographer. The initial prompt by a user generates 4 different images based on Midjourney's training data. While additional prompts applied to one of these images can influence subsequent images, the process is not controlled by the user because it is not possible to predict what Midjourney will create ahead of time. And I agree. In fact, the US Copyright Office just today put out a statement saying that AI images created from solely a prompt are more like commissioning an artist. And I'm stoked because I made that whole part of the script before this decision even dropped. When AI technology receives solely a prompt from a human and produces complex visual, written, or musical works in response, the traditional elements of authorship are determined and executed by that technology, not the human user. Users do not exercise ultimate creative control over how such systems interpret prompts and generate material. Instead, these prompts function more like instructions to a commissioned artist. When an AI technology determines the expression elements of its output, the generated material is not the product of human authorship. I get the desire to call it yours, I do. But it's not, and I don't think it should be legally protected as belonging to the person who gave it the prompt either, and I don't think we should consider prompters as artists here. I think that's just kind of dishonest. Because, as they say, if the AI is just doing what humans have done for thousands of years, then that's a pretty clear admission that you're not the one doing it. And if you're not doing it, then how much of the process are you doing, and how much of it is just the expression of the machine? AI artists love AI because it does so much of the work so quickly, so efficiently, but they also want to insist that they did all of the work, and the AI is just a tool like a pencil. Which is it? At some point, a tool ceases being a tool and becomes an automated process you simply activate with little influence. And just like the AI community loves to say, you can't copyright ideas, and if a 13-word prompt isn't just a list of ideas, then what is it? Where do you draw this idea that you created it, that you own it from? I'm just not convinced. The reality is, the vast majority of people using AI are a little more than commissioners, involved in the process, but they are not the artists. Some are collaborators, and a few are even working artists. But the widespread belief that typing 13 words into a generator makes whatever it spits out a reflection of your skills or creativity is delusional. Certainly not in any way that should afford someone copyright protection. But here is the more critical thing. It is not the end goal of these companies to be a tool for artists. They do not want you to have to do anything at all, to touch up on the image at the end or to supplement it with your own skills. When these companies go to their investors, when they go to their hedge fund meetings, they sell it as a one-size-fits-all approach where the artist is entirely unnecessary. The less the artist has to do, the better the product is to them. The fewer people they have to pay, the better the product. The less effective the strike will be against the executives, the better the product. The fewer creative decisions you actually have to make, the better the product. The end goal is a tool, yes, but not for us, for the corporations they sell it to, and not the artists they employ. Of course, all of this skips over a legal technicality behind all of these issues. Who actually owns AI art? At the moment, nobody, or we don't know. Officially, companies like Midjourney claim ownership over every single image they generate, but we don't know if they would stand up in court. New Zealand, where I live, is actually a bit unique in this, that we would probably afford copyright to the people who design the AI, the companies. But if nobody owns it, then it goes into public domain. And that might actually be the best solution. Then the art belongs to everyone, and it doesn't concentrate creative influence in the hands of corporations even further. And it kind of nips the problem of how this affects independent artists in the bud. And here's the thing, right? Like, if your concern is with democratizing art, then releasing all of this into the public domain is one hell of a way to do that.
then it's available to everyone. Then everyone can share in the fruits of this labor. We will have to see how this plays out legally though. Back when music downloads first arrived on the scene, there was this site called Napster, which basically allowed people to download music illegally. It too was built on stolen art, and the music companies of the day sued it into oblivion. But the writing was already on the wall. Music downloads and streaming would become the main way we now listen to music, and they had to adapt. So it was just a matter of time before new systems in line with copyright emerged, like Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. Napster might have been the first, but it wasn't the system that lasted. Midjourney and Stable Diffusion might be the early takers to this technology, but AI art generators more in line with copyright are being developed and might outlast them. We can already see this with Adobe Firefly. Again, it touts itself as a more ethical generator, being trained on, quote, Adobe stock images, openly licensed content, and public domain imagery. It is not perfect in how it curates that stock imagery, no, but it is clearly a step in the right direction. It's currently in beta, and I'm about to get access to it. Tom Scott has a great video talking about how AI feels a little like those early days of the internet, and, like the internet, we don't know how sophisticated AI will become, but it will inevitably change the world in ways we probably can't even imagine right now. That we don't know where we are on that curve of change, the beginning, the middle, or the end. The strange thing is, and I'm not quite sure how to quantify this or project this into the future, people have started training AI and lawyers on already AI-generated images. There's this belief that AI imagery has to be drawn out of a host of real videos and images and art, because that is definitely how it has started. That there's only this one layer of abstraction from the handmade to AI generated. But I actually think it's going to be a lot more complicated than that. 10 years from now, AI art might be built on AI art as that line really does blur with so many layers and layers and layers of abstraction from whatever that was originally drawn from to what it can now be generated into. It's going to be an entirely different ecosystem. Yes, AI is going to replace some artistic jobs. Companies will choose the cheap option over the human option every time they can. It'll start with the little things like the side of water bottles talking about blessing the rains down in Africa. From rain falls from the southern Alps to the Canterbury plains, the droplets permeate into deep ancient rock after a natural filter, and it'll go to corporate advertisements, that sort of soulless crap anyway. Voice-acted AI will become a lot more common as it becomes cheaper than hiring a human actor. In fact, we've already got, near indistinguishable voice imitations from some celebrities.
All right, I got us a couple stacks of iron. I'll start making some armor.
Okay, I'm just finishing up the base. Just gotta fill in one more wall.
Guys, I found the village.
Holy shit. Finally, you do something useful for once. What are the chords?
And soon enough, AI will replace some of the commissions many independent artists rely on for income. D&D character drawings, furry drawings, lots of furry drawings. That money will instead go to for-profit companies and hedge fund CEOs whose product was built without compensating the artists their technology relied on. Maybe in the more distant future it'll replace concept artists or animators. The AI community loves to say that in 2 years all creative jobs will be obsolete. I reckon this is probably a bit of an overestimation. These jobs are very multi-dimensional, requiring complex interpersonal and creative skills and efficiency that AI is still a long way off replicating. While it is very clever with certain things, it is hopelessly inept in other ways you probably don't think of, but are very difficult to fix. Other jobs will change. They might require a new skill set, the ability to work with AI, much like working with Photoshop has become expected in many creative jobs now. And new jobs will emerge too. Historically, we automated agriculture, industrial clothes making, and in the long view of history, people's lives are improved. Food and clothing became cheaper and more widely accessible, and it freed others up to do more highly skilled labor or pursue other things. But in the short view, people's lives are upheaved, businesses die, dreams are ruined. It is absolutely fair to be afraid of what is happening, to fear being replaced. And those who are mocking these people out of some misguided, self-righteous techno-utopianism are missing the point. No, they're not missing the point. They're missing human empathy, alright? I hate it. But I want to offer that there is also a world in which AI augments human creativity. I've spoken to many artists who have incorporated AI into their workflow to use it as a tool that advances their work. Some use it to generate commissions from their portfolio faster and cheaper than ever before, reworking it to be something new that they can own, reworking where need be so people can get cheaper commissions and they can earn more. It's easy to focus on how what once took a whole team of artists might now just take a few, leading to a loss of jobs. But the alternative way to view that is that what once you couldn't do because it required a whole team, you might now be able to do on your own or with just a friend. And in that way, AI might be able to amplify human creativity. I really admire Brown Table here on YouTube because he's making his own anime series called Interstellar Ranger Commence, almost entirely on his own, and it's really good. It's a hell of a lot of work, but it is possible. AI could allow people to skip small parts of the process while still retaining total control over the work. Artists whose skills are limited to, say, animation might one day use AI to give their gorgeous stylistic art scripting and voice acting, or a voice actor and a writer might use it to create art and animation. And because creating this sort of thing becomes cheaper and easier than ever before, there is less of a requirement for it to reach a large audience. We've already seen that happen here on YouTube. Entire news platforms now take place where once they required huge amounts of money and a studio and corporate backing to even make it work. I am not a professional videographer or editor, but new technologies have allowed me to earn a living through this video right now here with you without a huge studio behind me. I've got a couple of lights here and a camera and a microphone that is attached to a table hooked up to a little laptop. All of my tools, you might say. As long as this technology is ethically built, and people can maybe one day exercise real control over what comes out, this could mean more people making a living creatively than ever. Our relationship with art is probably going to change. I've already had the first AI art and writing magazines reach out to me for sponsorships. And the AI community loves to talk about how easy it is to create brilliant art that would have once taken days or weeks. But I think Syndrome is right here.
And when everyone's super, no one will be.
If everybody can create this instantly and easily, it'll be considered largely cheap and unremarkable. And I'm yet to see a huge difference between supposedly high-effort AI art and low-effort AI art. Computers can be the world's greatest chess masters, but we don't typically put that much stock in taking bots on. It feels strange to say, but I can imagine artisan art becoming a thing. You know, like handmade bread or clothes. There will absolutely be a market for handcrafted art where that process becomes something incredibly valuable. And I think there may be an emerging class of artists whose skills are less in expertise in one art form, but the ability to combine multiple art forms using AI as a supplement to that skill base. New expressionist artistic movements that defy AI conventions might emerge. Perhaps intent is going to become a more fundamental element of how we engage with art, given it can't be replicated by AI, at least not yet. The point is, art will not die. The reason automating this is different to automating accounting or hard labor in the fields is so many of us would make art regardless for fulfillment. Humans have created art wherever it can be made, and we have always sought out the humanity behind it. One way we have tried to deal with this legally is by requiring the disclosure of AI involvement in writing or art pieces, or as I am seeing more and more, there's a different category for quote AI-assisted works.
Of course, the better AI gets, the harder this will ever be to enforce, and there are a lot of bad incentives to just lie about using AI because it's more prestigious to have done it yourself. But there's a good chance that things like the Oscars will have standards for how involved AI can be because, it can produce things a lot quicker and needs to be held to a different standard. We will come to see AI works differently to that of entirely human-made ones. I don't know what that will be yet, but we will see. But, and this is the big but, that world I described where more creatives are earning a living than ever before is not guaranteed. In fact, I don't even know how likely it is. We might see a new crop of highly qualified, skilled artists rise out of this with a new skill set, but we will also see an exponential rise in cheap, easily generated, instant gratification, highly clickable videos and articles and art that makes it harder than ever for real artists and voices to be heard in the first place. Oversaturation. And so we come back to Clarkesworld, the literary magazine which was flooded with over 500 AI-generated spam stories. And they were spam. In a blog post, editor Neil Clark gave an example of obvious plagiarism of a story from 1956, not to mention the absolutely hopeless writing anyway. While the AI will inevitably improve till one day we probably can't tell the difference, and Clark even admitted that some AI stories probably slipped past him, I hate this. Magazines like Clarkesworld are set up to celebrate the artistic process and the artists themselves just as much as the end result, and that becomes a hell of a lot harder when it's easier for the Hustlebot 10,000 NPC to generate 500 mediocre stories in a day than to learn how to write. These magazines are not money-hustling ventures. There's no money in short stories. I don't know what these people were trying to accomplish. They are where a lot of writers, including myself, get their foot in the door in personal expression. And Clarkesworld is one of the bigger ones. Small literary magazines certainly do not have the financial or personnel support to wade through hundreds of AI submissions, and so will go under. By sheer numbers, slower artistic expression can become unviable, financially or personally. And that is something worth protecting. The endless vomit of AI-generated stuff is just going to drown out the entire point of what making art in the first place was, it seems. Hi, Tim from the future here, or you might say, hello future me. Well, just yesterday, a new AI dropped, one called Pseudowrite, a program designed as, quote, the ideal interface for writers and machines to collaborate on a narrative. So, up until this point, AI has really struggled to create any form of pretty coherent, consistent, long-form writing. It's built for short-form stuff, a couple of paragraphs at most. But with Pseudowrite, you chuck in a genre, you brain dump an idea for a story, and it generates a possible summary, whole characters for you. You might tweak them a little, and then it generates whole chapters just from what you've given it with a click of a button. It is pitched as the same as having a writing or critique partner. It is not. All this will see is shitty, thoughtless stories flooding the market. It's a tool for people who want to make a quick buck with little effort, not only destroying the careers of those who are willing to put in the work, but undermining the critical role art and self-expression plays in society as an ongoing cultural conversation, the medium through which we express ourselves and define ourselves, in which we critique and reimagine our world. With less and less thought and engagement on a fundamental level with the art we create, our own voice will get drowned out by a predictive language model that believes nothing. And you might say, oh, this will create a culture of artistic editors, that'll be the skill. But editing is not only a vastly different art to that of writing, but just as quickly as AI adapted to writing coherent long-form stories, it will also adapt to doing all of the editing. Pseudowrite will grow, or another program that comes after it, to not require your input, to not need you to refine it at all. The less art we have to make, the better the product. And I think it's pretty clear that the less we do, the less it's yours, the less it's your self-expression. I think it's kind of fitting in this way that it's called Pseudowrite, as in pseudo, fake, illusory, not real. And writers know this, of course. When you rewrite a second draft from scratch, you write every sentence again, even if you're reading through it, at the same time from your first draft, you see it entirely differently, on a word-by-word level, a line-by-line basis. You come to refine the story in a detailed way that you just don't get by reading over someone else's work and tweaking it, refining it, changing a word here and there. There's a big difference between the drafting process and the editing process for this reason, and the lack of experience, the lack of time and journey that you've spent with a story in something like this means that your ability to assess it will be far more imprecise. Meaning is found in the details in this way, and the same can be said of all of the AI art generators like DALL-E. All these programs are fundamentally made from a consumer's perspective, creating as much content as possible as easily as you can to sell, consume, digest, none of which may require a human to express themselves to the world at all. Slowly but surely, AI turns us into a culture of consumers, even from the end of being the creator. We are absorbed into the self-perpetuating machine that simultaneously creates and consumes, even to the point that it charges us to supposedly create. And to be honest, if you don't love writing enough to actually write, then don't. But don't claim it's yours either. Eventually, there will be no more creativity for these people to monetize. And then what? Some people try to justify all of this by saying, well, one day it'll be nigh indistinguishable. People won't be able to tell at all between human and AI, and how can it be bad when people are enjoying AI-generated books and films and music? I find this utterly baffling. It assumes humans are naturally inclined to do what's best for them, either individually or sociologically, when there's not that much reason to think that. The damage AI does is simultaneously very easy to miss and very difficult to fix, playing on a lot of our flaws, because ultimately, somewhere in the rot of the human condition is an AI spitting out art and books en masse, while millions of us lie back and consume it under the delusion that we're somehow engaging with the rest of the world, with each other, when we're not. We're training a predictive language and color model. At best, we're simulating self-expression and human connection. And if the oversaturation problem was just all of us fighting for creative attention, then it probably wouldn't be that much worse than what we already have. There's already an endless stream of content you could never possibly finish from 1,000 artists and studios and streaming services and YouTube and every Marvel film Disney prints each week.
You can't fight good. Comedy.
But AI is a corporate product. If individuals are capitalizing on the ability to easily create masses of new content, then corporations will too, even more so, with even more resources and even more sway. This lot want to produce as much as possible, as cheaply as possible to keep you subscribing, and the people behind these AIs have been presenting this technology to their investors as exactly that solution. You are right in that they are tools. Tools for companies to cut costs and further dominate the creative markets they already control too much of by cutting more and more creatives out of the process. This is not a world without meaningful art, but it is one where human creations struggle more and more to rise through the ranks. And again, that is something worth protecting. Art is important because it's one of the few universal languages we have, and it's easy to say it's fine because humans will never stop creating art anyway, and that's partly true. But I do not want to live in a world where we cannot be heard speaking that language over the thunderous monotony of AI-generated content, be it on Netflix or Instagram or DeviantArt. Especially AI-generated content owned and proliferated by corporations, because that is what will happen, and is in fact already happening. Netflix has already used AI to generate background art for an animated short, and if it could use it to create the script and voice acting too, it sure as hell would, without a creative in sight. The market might already be saturated, but it's saturated with people creating and directing and writing and editing and acting and costume designing and expressing themselves. And if people do not see the inherent value in that, then corporations will stop caring too. Because the realm of AI art isn't just static images of mid-journey fantasy-generated landscapes and big-titty anime girls anymore. It's video as well. We've all seen the psychedelic trip that is the human evolution video, but AI video is evolving too. At the moment, it's pretty limited. People can sort of reskin video, changing someone's outfit or the background or their skin color. Coca-Cola produced an ad that incorporated AI video, but it was still very much under the care of like an actual animator. Purely AI-generated video is something out of a Lovecraftian horror film.
Pizza monsters we can't resist. They've taken over, we can't persist. Pizza nuggets, the perfect snack. But eat too many and you'll never come back.
It's like aliens guessing at what might be vaguely recognizable to humans as if they'd only seen a handful of corporate adverts through a filter that made everything look like The Scream. But, of course, the technology will improve. My bet is it will alter the animated and VFX industries first for all of the stated reasons, and not necessarily in good ways. Currently, the Writers Guild of America is on strike. Last time this happened, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen was cesareaned into the world.
Mojo, no dominating Frankie.
Seeing how poor those shows and films were without their writers on set, the strike succeeded and they were paid better. Strikes like this work because of the collective bargaining power of the workers showing people what it's like without them and forcing executives to the table. But the whole pitch of AI art is that it can seamlessly replicate the self-expression and skill of a human artist. If not now, then maybe tomorrow or the day after. In the hands of executives, it can take the wind out of strikes just like this one, because the bottom line is all that matters. In fact, one of the demands of the Writers Guild at the moment is to limit the involvement of AI in the writers' rooms. Animation and VFX studios are already being slashed and under budget and understaffed. They're pushed to cut costs and accelerate production times and meet impossible deadlines. And if employees can't fit into that mold, then they're simply done away with. We use art as a way to bridge the divide between us and other people. It's so fundamental to how we engage with each other. The intent and meaning embedded in a work is so critical for how I, very much, and I hope you, engage with a work. When we talk about AI being a tool for who? The billionaire CEO of Warner Brothers crushing a writer's strike and buying their third luxury yacht? This is not saying AI is bad because it's going to take away jobs, but that it puts even more power in the hands of the executives and takes away the bargaining power of the average worker, undermining working conditions in places that are already bad, and even in the jobs it enhances and creates. The critical problem here is twofold, and they have to be viewed in conjunction with each other. First, the power imbalance that only deepens between the executives and corporations and the average worker. Secondly, the damage that dynamic does to our relationship with art and self-expression and how it incentivizes less and less creative decision-making on a corporate level. I don't really care that Coca-Cola made an AI-assisted ad. It's an ad, but I do care that Netflix will increasingly pressure people to hand over creative decisions in the stories we see and experience to AI rather than people to save money. For some godforsaken reason, by the way, the worst people in the world, i.e. Twitter Blue subscribers, are laughing at the writers' strike. They're insisting that writers are somehow all incredibly well-paid millionaires and they should just go get a real job, ha ha ha. When in reality, the streaming model has decimated pay for writers, and they're just looking to get what they basically already had back in 2009 or so, residuals on the shows that they helped make that drove millions of people to places like Netflix and Amazon. The irony being, that the people who insist creatives should just go learn how to code and that that's a real job will also be automated, given that AI is rapidly getting better at coding too, and to be honest, my bet is it'll get even better at coding faster than it'll ever get better at writing. Of course, the reality is we already live in a world where a huge amount of the art we consume is algorithmically influenced or even generated. You can see it on YouTube and TikTok all the time. Those accounts which take random videos and attach them to automated voice readings of some Reddit post with progressively more distractions because our attention span is screwed. But the kicker is, sometimes that's fine, that's okay. Sure, we use art to grow and internalize and speak to one another and express ourselves. But sometimes we just want to watch TikToks of Obama, Biden, and Trump play Minecraft. Mindless entertainment. Algorithmic recommendations even help us find stuff we might like. I kind of like that.
Yo, Obama, want to hop on Minecraft right now? I got a few hours away from Melania.
Sure, homie, let me just text Joe.
In the same way, a lot of artists I've spoken to say that, it's fine to use it privately for, inspiration for your Dungeons and Dragons campaign, for your setting and world building in your book. And you might argue that Netflix's Hallmark Christmas films are basically AI generated at this point, and I, for one, cannot wait for the Vanessa Hudgens cinematic universe with the Christmas Prince 69
Every single character in the world is played solely by her. And there's nothing wrong with that inherently. But I do not want to live in a world where the books we read, the films we watch, the music we listen to are less and less human expressions. Be it in composition or colour or scripting or anywhere else that we invest art with meaning. That Netflix film only used it to help with backgrounds, but then it'll be with character design. And in fact, the Japanese AI company they worked with, Rena, already offers that as a service. There is a chance AI will never really be good enough to cut out creatives entirely, but there is also a world where we have less and less influence so long as that profit line keeps going up and the rest is good enough and out of human hands and passed off to an algorithm of sorts. Even worse, a corporate algorithm. It's easy to insist AI is just a tool because it's nothing without human intervention. But look at what ChatGPT can already do. I gave it the prompt, "Hi ChatGPT, give me a script for a Netflix show about a small dog and a baby goat who go on an adventure with a hot air balloon ride." And easy enough, it gave me a coherent script with characters and conflict and names and structure, and no, it was not very good. But this is only the beginning of this technology. This technology is still very young and it will get better. One day corporate executives or an algorithm will be able to determine what it needs to generate, and voila, there we go. In my mind, you can't simultaneously sing the praises of how competent this technology will be and not expect it to be used like this. And this isn't some far-off fantasy. The AI community is already celebrating integrating ChatGPT with AI art generators to create what they call a fully AI flow. The AI creates the prompts and the art, no human required. And we're already seeing AI text-to-video generators using AI-generated voices with impressive results. It's just a matter of integrating it with the right algorithm from there. Recently, someone created a Skyrim mod that allows ChatGPT to generate dialogue for NPC characters. You can ask them anything and it will literally give you an answer back.
I hear a lot of interesting stories from the people passing through. It's a good way to stay connected to what's happening in the world outside of Whiterun.
I gotta be honest, I don't know how I feel about this. It's easy to say it enriches the game, right? But with what, really? What's it doing outside that when this technology is applied more and more to the games made on that corporate scale? ChatGPT isn't making creative decisions here, it is an elaborate language predictive model. In 2013, Ken Liu published a short story in Escape Pod magazine called Real Artists. It's about a girl called Sophia who grows up adoring films made by Semaphore Pictures. They're the best films in the entire world. She would never love a person as much as she loved the company that made her cry and laugh. And after several years, she finally works her way up to join them. And when she does, she realizes how these films are truly made. An algorithm called Big Semi generates hundreds of films every day by taking seemingly random ideas and mashing them together with stock footage and dialogue before showing it to a test audience. Then it measures how their faces move with absolute precision to figure out how people are responding to it, their emotions. Then it tweaks and changes the film to create a better emotional response, till after thousands of iterations, it has engineered the perfect film. Moving and powerful ones like those Sophia admired so much as a child. Sophia here is confronted with the reality. Her job is to be part of that test audience that Big Semi relies on. And the story ends with the line, "A real artist will do whatever it takes to make a great vision come true, even if it's just sitting still in a dark room." Liu offers an interesting idea here, that great art isn't created by artists, but by audiences, that it doesn't even need human intervention at all. There is some truth to what Liu says here, but honestly, I don't think I've read anything more utterly dystopian than that story, especially because we know that's not how most algorithms work in this world we have built. Companies use algorithms to push new things you might engage with already, and there's no reason to think that technology wouldn't be adapted to generating new art. The sorts of stories that most people would click on, the types of character designs that people are more likely to like watching. Algorithms are designed to keep you watching, that is it. And in doing so, we know they play on the worst instincts of the human mind. the addictive, the echo chamber, the viral, the clickable, the profitable, and that's not to delve into the way they can reinforce stereotypes and social stigmas. These are issues we know, and that's not an excuse to just let them get worse. They feed us more of our own opinions and lead us to more extreme versions of our own beliefs, but these are the algorithms that corporations would use to inform their AI creations. What's trending? Dark academia, enemies to lovers. Well, we'll get something like that, without much human expression or creativity built into that. And sure, from time to time it might create something genuinely meaningful, touching, powerful, but the bottom line is this. A world saturated with human creations is a good thing. A world saturated with corporate generations is not. And no, before people go typing away in the comments, our media will not be completely AI generated or automated. There will always be a market for human-made high-end art. It can be a selling point, and for things like reality TV. I mean, I watch Denis Villeneuve films because I trust his vision. And again, I don't know what the future holds. AI may never get this far creatively, or humans might get bored of it. But we have to be aware of where this might take us. And I know it feels like I'm making some Fahrenheit 451 Orwellian dystopian novel out of this, but I don't really know where else this goes if not to cut costs, which is what they've advertised it will do, and entrust AI with more and more of the art we engage with, which they have also advertised it will do. I already mentioned the Netflix short, and to be clear, this is not AI being used as a creative tool here. Yes, maybe AI will one day give creators absolute control in ways that we have not seen before, right down to the specifics of every line, or a cat sitting in the window of a house in the background of a piece of art. But corporations do not care about that, not so far as it hurts the bottom line. I asked you guys how you would feel about an endless stream of AI-generated content perfectly catered to your interests, like Big Semi. It makes you cry, it moves you, and it gives you cheap, instant gratification nonsense we can't help but fixate on too when you want it. 8% of you said, hey, that sounds great. I believe creativity isn't just valuable, it's essential. It's how we grow and connect. And this sort of technology in the hands of corporations could strangle that cultural exchange if we aren't careful. And I feel like I grew up on all these dystopian novels that said art just became an endless stream of dopamine hits, and now people are like, finally, an endless stream of dopamine hits! The irony of not listening, I suppose. And it is easy to view AI purely as a consumer, as it doesn't matter how it's made so long as it just gives you that dopamine hit, whatever you want at that moment. And this includes the mindless opportunists amongst us who would pump out an endless stream of nothing with no interest in being creative or connecting whatsoever just for a quick buck on top of those corporate interests. But I think we need to resist that urge, not to give into it in totality, you know? Listen to this conversation I found between two AI users online. The AI can have fun shitting out an endless amount of cool art as the dust settles and the last human crumbles to dust, but it's not Skylit level spooky, devaluation of art caused by oversaturation, automation is shit, but it's not the end of the world. I don't know, having a limitless supply of free high quality art sounds amazing to me. I was also a fan of replacing typewriters with computers though, so maybe I'm the devil in this scenario. Oh, that sounded really pretentious. These people view art purely as a product to keep us entertained and do not see the value in protecting creativity, in art acting as a social conversation down to the details. They see it purely as a consumer. And yeah, we have already automated a ton of things, agriculture and industry and accounting, to free us up to do more highly skilled labor or to do things we're more passionate about, to drink and make art, to be heard and involved in that conversation. I'm gonna take a stab and say that if you're watching this video, that is what you'd do. And if AI is meant to free us up, what is it freeing us up to do by automating that process, really? But it's the trust fund CEO babies who would gut that to save a few pennies, even though they pay animators and artists pretty much nothing anyway. So no, I do not want to live in a world where more and more of how we interact with each other artistically is automated or guided by corporate algorithm. There is this tendency in tech circles to assume that technology will be our ultimate liberator, that if everything is automated, if everything is technologically augmented, then all of our problems will vanish, and we will transcend to some techtopia, and in that vision, it doesn't matter how we get there, the ends justify the means. But that leaves out who owns these technologies, who gets to decide what they make, who gets to decide the priorities of the algorithms that underpin our lives, and importantly, we're freer, but to do what? One of my favorite series is the Culture series by Ian M. Banks, and it describes a galaxy-spanning civilization utopia almost, right? Where virtually everything is automated and controlled by artificial intelligence, freeing up its people to live the lives they want to live, doing whatever they want, including leaving space for people to create art, or to lead, or to fight, or to make industrial level blowtorches if that's what they want to do. Automation is great, but it too is a tool. For us individuals, yes, but also for us as a society, and we must decide how we want to use it. In a recent video, Corridor Crew used AI to develop an animated short film. It's really quite remarkable in many ways, but they make a strange claim at the beginning.
Like, let's talk about traditional 2D animation, cartoons. The most creatively liberated medium is also the least democratized.
Democratized in this context means to be available to as many people as possible, both as artists and audiences. It is a very odd claim though. Animation is arguably the most democratized, with anyone able to pick up a pencil or draw frames or animate in Blender with the host of tutorials you can find online, in sharp contrast to, say, live action films, which usually requires several people on even a small project, or game development, which is perhaps even less accessible. But this term democratized crops up in AI circles all the time. This belief that AI will empower everyone to tell their stories. And there is something really compelling in that, isn't there?
But if democratizing art is about making everyone heard as a writer, a musician, an animator, that is not the world we're creating. Another artist said it well. In a democracy, your voice matters. In a world flooded with AI media, your voice has no chance of being heard at all. Art as a vessel for human connection being eroded till we're just screaming into the regurgitated mass of predictive if-then statements. Stories live and die on human connection, and we won't find that here.
And I gotta be honest, part of the reason art is so special is that it is the culmination of your decisions and your expressions. I don't know where this technology will be in 10 years' time, but if it is about empowering people to tell their stories, it needs way more room for people to actually express themselves meaningfully in the tiny details where that sort of intent is found. There's a chance that it's just not that satisfying to create through it if you can't get it to reflect your vision and dreams. We'll see. And honestly, democratizing art here is a little difficult for me to swallow because it pretends most artists are earning anything, let alone enough to make a living off their art. A tiny, tiny fraction of artists and authors and sculptors are doing that, but that doesn't stop the rest of them from expressing themselves because for most people, it's just not about the money. There's no gatekeeping here. There are no barriers, barely any whatsoever. At most, you could say having time is a luxury. But is it really more of a luxury than having a computer powerful enough to run this technology? Especially when time-poor artists are the most common species of artist. And the even more sour half of this is how for a lot of people AI really is just about money and creating more consumers, not unlike NFTs and cryptocurrency, which too espouse the virtues of decentralizing and democratizing money and art and whatever, but were themselves mostly just about making bank for a small number of people. The other way to think about AI democratizing art is it's finally really cheap to get good art, good hentai, and the art community is, quote, elitist for asking for minimum wage on a commission, but now it's really cheap. But look, you're not actually hurting the elitist sector of the art community that uses art as a tax dodge or spends $120,000 on a stupid banana strapped to a wall. You're hurting independent artists who earn very little. And if we do this right, AI could bring down the cost of commission a lot. If you really want to democratize art, then empower people to earn a living off it. and don't fund corporate products built without their consent on their art. There's some real cognitive dissonance to insist AI is about caring about the little guy while not giving two shits about the independent artist whose art it was built on, and whose art continues to be fraudulently used. The people fully behind AI art aren't going to agree with me. They probably already checked out some time ago, and that's fine. I'm here to talk to you. I've spent this video speaking to the issues with AI in the world of art, but this technology is going to have even more far-reaching consequences in other areas of society. Security, social media, politics. Some of them will be great, like Google just announced AI writing for emails and slideshows, which will make corporate work easier and less monotonous. And I mean, ChatGPT has some incredible capabilities which can only be likened to when Google first came on the scene, how that changed the world. A lot of AI tools are incredible. They're miraculous things that allow you to easily organize information or do simple coding or SEO work, which allows people to do work more efficiently on stuff that they probably didn't want to do before. It could be used to help people get started writing, and there's some value in that. Google Bard just dropped with 1 million features I can't even begin to list out, and I'm sure that a year down the track there's going to be an AI that does all of that even more efficiently than it does right now. In the same way that products like Grammarly ostensibly help someone refine their writing, supposedly it doesn't, don't trust Grammarly, it's a terrible system, never ever get it, I hate it so much. AI might point out ways to make sentences more interesting or better word choices. I don't like that very much. I'd prefer people learn how to do that on their own so you can make these decisions more consciously, but if you're starting out, if you're a kid, then that is you learning. It's like having a teacher give you feedback. That is absolutely a role that AI could play there. But many of these effects are more troubling. Deepfake porn, where people can map the faces of celebrities or people they know onto other videos, is already a massive problem. It's only just starting to be regulated. And fake voice clips of Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson talking about Sonic are harmless enough.
I just think I would love to get ratatouille'd.
Ratatouille'd?
Like have a little guy up there.
Excuse me?
Making me cook delicious meals.
No, I understand. I've seen the film.
But what happens when there are seamlessly made widespread clips of presidents and politicians advocating for things they'd never support? For cutting Social Security, for expanding the military.
For instance, they could have me say things like, Killmonger was right.
Politically savvy people might be able to spot the difference, but plenty will slip into the morass of misinformation that poisons the well and shifts the course of politics. Clips of renowned researchers rejecting environmentalism or doctors rejecting vaccines would be enough to fuel the already rising anti-vax, anti-environmental conspiracy movements. Social media will inevitably be made worse, even worse than it is, by people easily generating whole catfishing profiles to con lonely people out of cash. The issues we already have will be exacerbated. And this is not an argument to outlaw it. The internet also made many of the issues that already existed in society much worse. They also had a lot of good as well. But we do regulate it, and more importantly, people need to be aware of how this technology works if we are going to remain vigilant about it. The AI community's ultimate fallback is to call people Luddites, that anyone who complains about new technologies is just afraid of the future. This of course ignores that artists have been constantly adapting to new tools and technologies, especially across the rise of the internet. And these same people will insist corporations handing over more and more of our creative expression to AI is just a hypothetical, so we shouldn't care. Well, I'm sure once upon a time mass surveillance was a hypothetical too, as was the lack of digital privacy, as were non-consensual deepfakes, as was the prevalence of microtransactions and gambling for children. As I said, I think this time we might just be ahead of the curve. AI is here to stay, but we have to decide how far it goes. And so here, at the end of all things, I want to thank my patrons again. I'm a writer, I'm a creator, I'm trying to make a difference, and if you want to support me, then please do so at the link to Patreon down in the description below. you